DeWanna Bonner just delivered one of the most tone-deaf statements in recent WNBA history.
DeWanna Bonner in the hot seat after saying what she stated last night in her press conference, man. I can't lie, it does look like some hypocrisy going on.
DeWanna Bonner continues to take shots at the Indiana Fever and the Fever fans. I think it's absolutely disgusting.
In a jaw-dropping ESPN interview, she looked straight into the camera and declared, "I wouldn't change a thing." This coming from someone who essentially finessed $200,000 from the Indiana Fever and their devoted fan base before orchestrating one of the most calculated exits we've ever witnessed. She signed that contract, cashed those checks for months, then mysteriously vanished for 5 games with vague personal reasons, only to force her way out and land exactly where she wanted all along. Phoenix.
Wouldn't do anything differently. I think my journey is my journey and I'm going to accept that. It carried me to where I am in Phoenix and it happened that way for a reason. I wouldn't do anything differently. Man, you took 80 grand from the Indiana Fever. You could have just signed. Like, that's one of the things, like, I don't understand why you take these interviews. I don't understand why someone would take an interview and say that, when the reality is that all you did was took a whole bunch of money from a team to not show up.
The sheer audacity is breathtaking. Here's a veteran who took the money, refused to show up for work, and now has the nerve to act like she's the victim in this entire mess. We're talking about someone who averaged a pathetic 7.1 points per game while putting up bricks and looking completely disinterested. Yet she's sitting there acting like Indiana did her wrong. The delusion is off the charts, and what we're about to reveal will show you exactly how deep this betrayal really goes.
You refuse to show up to work while receiving money, while taking payment. You refuse to show up and do the job. And let's be clear, you wasn't even good while you was here. You was shooting threes hitting the side of the backboard.
But this is definitely going to be a part of her history, man. Because the new wave is taking over. These new fans are watching. So at the end of the day, yeah, it's going to be a part of her history, unfortunately.
If you're as stunned by this level of unprofessionalism as we are, smash that like button and subscribe, because what's coming next will blow your mind. Let's talk about the most damning evidence, the massive gap between what Bonner promised and what she actually delivered. Her performance in Indiana was nothing short of embarrassing. We're looking at 7.1 points per game, 3.8 rebounds, and 1.6 assists from someone who was supposed to bring veteran leadership and stability to a young, hungry team. She started only 3 out of the 9 games she bothered to show up for, which tells you everything about her impact when she was technically available.
This is DeWanna Bonner. I wouldn't do anything differently. I think my journey is my journey. I'm going to accept that. It carried me to where I am now in Phoenix, and it happened that way for a reason. It didn't happen that way for a reason. You forced yourself out of Indiana, DeWanna.
But here's where it gets absolutely infuriating. The second she threw on that Phoenix Mercury jersey, she magically transformed into the player everyone thought they were getting. 22 points and 11 rebounds in just her second game with her new team. Funny how that works, isn't it? This wasn't about finding the right system or building chemistry. This is stone-cold proof that Bonner was sandbagging her entire time in Indianapolis. Compare those Indiana stats to her sudden explosion in Phoenix, and you're looking at 2 completely different athletes. That dramatic leap in production isn't just suspicious, it's a confession. She had that fire all along, but chose to suppress it until she could play where she wanted. Even casual fans could see through this manipulation, and it represents the worst kind of entitlement, using your professional platform to play games while the people who believed in you are left holding the bill.
I just don't understand this. I don't understand why DeWanna Bonner is taking these interviews at this point in time, because I'm like, look, you're in Phoenix, you've got what you wanted, you've got what everyone expected you wanted all along, everything's gone your way. Indiana haters are going to love you because you screwed over the Fever. They're going to love you because you screwed over the Fever. Phoenix Mercury fans are going to love you. Rival fans are going to love you because you basically screwed over the Fever. Fever fans are going to hate you because you screwed over the Fever.
Now we get to the part that makes this whole situation even more disgusting. Bonner's sudden departure and immediate landing spot wasn't some cosmic coincidence. It was all about her love life. Phoenix just happens to be where her fiancé, Alyssa Thomas, is playing. That's not destiny. That's pure convenience wrapped up in a fairy tale narrative. This wasn't about chasing championships or finding the perfect basketball fit. This was about orchestrating a reunion with her partner while collecting a paycheck from Indiana in the process. The timing of her trade demands, her pre-selected destination, and her immediate chemistry with Phoenix all point to one thing. Indiana was always meant to be a temporary cash grab until she could engineer her escape. Think about how calculated this really was. Bonner and Thomas previously played together on the Connecticut Sun from 2020 to 2024, so she knew exactly what that partnership could produce. She used Indiana as a stepping stone, collecting their money while plotting her return to playing alongside the woman she's planning to marry. The Mercury's willingness to participate in this scheme, rewarding someone who violated professional standards, sends a dangerous message that contracts are suggestions and personal desires trump team commitments. But that wasn't the whole story. What happened next would shock everyone.
First of all, the fans are the victim. The organization was the victim here. Like, why are we sitting here, she up in these articles like she was a victim, like she did, like something was done wrong? No, the fans are a victim. They welcome you with open arms. They embraced you, and you turned your back and you quit. It's that simple. You quit. You refused to show up to work. You wasn't hurt. You wasn't sick. It wasn't a personal fit. No, you just didn't want to be on the team no more.
And yet, despite the lackluster performance, Fever fans showed patience. They hoped she'd turn it around. They gave her the benefit of the doubt.
Remember how this all started? Bonner didn't arrive in Indianapolis complaining or dropping hints about being unhappy. She played the part perfectly. She smiled for cameras, embraced the massive fan support, and marveled at crowds she'd never experienced before. She spoke about being inspired to compete for a championship and eager to mentor rising stars like Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. These weren't throwaway media soundbites. These were full-throated endorsements that made fans believe she was genuinely committed. People bought her jersey, shared her story on social media, and defended her when her performance didn't match her paycheck. They made excuses, saying she just needed time to build chemistry. They posted highlight reels of her rare flashes of brilliance and called her the veteran glue player they needed. To discover now that she was probably plotting her exit from the moment she signed makes this feel like an emotional con job. The support from Indiana was real and authentic, but her commitment was completely fake. She exploited that trust, soaked up every perk and benefit, then burned every bridge on her way out once she found her perfect situation. In any other profession, you don't get to lie your way through a paycheck and then pretend it was all fair play. The betrayal cuts so deep because fans invested emotionally in someone who was never really there. They believed in her journey, only to find out they were just funding someone else's romantic reunion.
You came here, you stunk it up, and then you got benched. Just because you was okay with coming off the bench in another situation don't mean you was okay with coming off the bench in this situation. So I want to know what's the real? What's the real? Because you can't say while you was here, you said, oh, I've never played in front of this many fans. You were embraced by the fans. You spoke highly of the fans while you were here. You were a starter, but you wasn't playing well. And that was nobody else's fault that you was shooting threes, hitting the side of the backboard, and you was smoking layups. And then your starting spot got took, and then all of a sudden you refused to show up to work.
Maybe the most damaging fallout from this entire mess is what it reveals about Indiana's front office. They got completely worked by a veteran who knew exactly how to twist the system in her favor. The fact that she got away with it raises serious questions about this organization's ability to manage talent, enforce accountability, and establish any kind of winning culture. When you're trying to build around generational talent like Caitlin Clark, the last thing you need is leadership that gets outmaneuvered by every player with a personal agenda. Bonner exposed a fundamental lack of structure and showed other players that in Indiana, if you make enough noise and create enough drama, you can escape any contract, regardless of your commitment or impact. The front office's silence throughout this entire situation only made things worse. Instead of getting ahead of the narrative or providing transparency, they stayed quiet and let speculation run wild. Now it's up to the current management to convince future free agents that Indiana is a professional, no-nonsense organization, even though everything about this situation screams the opposite. Until Indiana proves it can enforce standards and prioritize team success over individual personalities, it'll remain vulnerable to being used by veterans who want guaranteed money without guaranteed effort. The Bonner incident essentially created a playbook for how disgruntled players can skip town while cashing in. And that's not just bad PR. It's an operational failure that threatens everything they're trying to build.
And if we gonna keep it real, Chloe Bibby, the new 7-day signee, has fit in and played better than DeWanna Bonner did anyway. Let's be clear here. Chloe Bibby came in first game, knocked down 2 threes. DeWanna Bonner first game versus the gum on the bottom of the shoe, Chicago Sky. We had to jump through hoops of fire and do all types of abracadabra magic tricks to get her to finally score to break that record.
What makes Bonner's "I wouldn't change a thing" statement so infuriating is how it perfectly captures the entitled mindset that's becoming too common in professional sports. She violated the basic principle that when you sign a contract, you honor that commitment, regardless of whether circumstances meet your personal preferences. Instead, she treated her Indiana tenure like a job she could abandon whenever it stopped serving her interests. This sets a dangerous precedent that contracts are optional and ethics come second to personal convenience. Other players are watching, and they're seeing that with enough manipulation and the right narrative, you can force your way out of any situation while still collecting your money. The message being sent is that professionalism and accountability are negotiable concepts. The disgusting part is how she's now trying to rewrite history, painting herself as some misunderstood figure who was simply following her destiny. The gaslighting is so blatant, it's almost insulting to anyone who followed this situation. She refused to adapt when her role evolved, threw a fit when things didn't revolve around her, then orchestrated her escape to play house with her fiancé while acting like Indiana was the problem. At this point, it's not even about basketball anymore. It's about basic respect for the fans who support you, the organization that pays you, and the profession that made you wealthy. Bonner failed on all 3 counts, and her refusal to acknowledge any wrongdoing shows a level of delusion that would be comical if it wasn't so damaging to the sport's integrity. The real tragedy is that Indiana fans deserved better, the organization deserved better, and the WNBA deserved better than this calculated betrayal disguised as a love story.